The quadratic formula. Solve the equation using the quadratic formula. 2x squared equals 8x plus 3. In order to use the quadratic formula, we need to write the equation in ax squared plus bx plus c form. To do that, I'm going to subtract the 8x and the 3 from both sides. This will leave me with 2x squared minus 8x minus 3 equals 0. Now I need to identify the values for a, b, and c to use in my quadratic formula, which is listed here. The value for a is the number in front of the x squared term, so a equals 2. The value for b is the number in front of the x term. And remember, we need to take the sign with it. So b equals negative 8. The value for c is the constant term, and we need to also take the sign with it. So c equals negative 3. Next, we're going to plug the values in for a, b, and c into the quadratic formula and solve. So I have a negative b, which is a negative 8, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so negative 8 squared, minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is negative 3. And that is all over 2a, which is 2 times 2. Now we need to simplify this. So a negative of a negative 8 turns into a positive 8. Then plus or minus the square root of negative 8 squared. Negative 8 squared is negative 8 times negative 8, which gives us 64. Now we're going to subtract 4 times 2 times negative 3. 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 times negative 3 is negative 24. So I have 64 minus a negative 24. And this is all being divided by 2 times 2, which is 4. Now I'm going to simplify what's underneath the square root bar. So I have 8 plus or minus the square root of 64 minus a negative 24. Whenever you have two minus signs together, or you're subtracting a negative, that turns into a positive. So this is 64 plus 24. And 64 plus 24 is 88. Next, I want to try and reduce the square root of 88. In order to do that, I'm going to list the prime factors of 88. So 8 times 11 is 88, and 4 times 2 gives me 8, and then 2 times 2 gives me 4. So I'm just writing a factor tree of all the prime factors. And I factored those numbers till they couldn't be factored anymore. So my resulting factors are 2 times 2 times 2 times 11. And I can replace the 88 with 2 times 2 times 2 times 11. Now the square root operation tells me to look for pairs of 2. So I have a pair of 2's underneath the bar. When I pull the pair out, it becomes a single digit. So just the number 2 comes out. So now I have 8 plus or minus 2 square root of 2 times 11, because that's what's left after I took the square root of that pair. And that's being divided by 4. And we can simplify that further by multiplying the values underneath the square root bar. So I have 8 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 22 over 4. And I'm almost done, but the last thing I can do is try to simplify the coefficients by the denominator. Now my coefficients are the 8 and the 2. So 8, 2, and 4 are all divisible by 2. So that tells me that I can reduce all of those numbers by 2. So I'll divide each of those numbers by 2 to get my final result. Now 8 divided by 2 is 4. So this becomes a 4 plus or minus 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I can just leave the square root of 22 there. And then 4 divided by 2 is 2. So a 2 goes on the bottom now. And this is my final answer. X equals 4 plus or minus the square root of 22 all over 2. And again, we can write those as two separate solutions by separating the plus and minus sign. This would give me x equals 4 plus the square root of 22 over 2, and x equals 4 minus the square root of 22 over 2.